President Trump's speech today was not just a message to the leaders of Iran, but he also at times spoke directly to the people of Iran as well. Watch this.
To the people and leaders of Iran, we want you to have a future, and a great future, one that you deserve, one of prosperity at home and harmony with the nations of the world. The United States is ready to embrace peace with all who seek it.
Here now, Nazee Moinian, an Iranian scholar. She was born in Iran and moved to this country when she was 16. And she's a political consultant on Iran as well. Also, Lara Logan, host of Lara Logan Has No Agenda on Fox Nation. And she has reported, of course, extensively on the wars in the Middle East. Great to have both of you with us tonight. Thank you. I think it's so important that we talk, and I know this is very important to you, Nazee, as an Iranian American, that we talk about the people of Iran separate from the leadership of Iran. How do the people of Iran receive that message today from the president?
So that's, to me, the most paramount question right now. It's too bad that many in this country and abroad in the Western media think that this regime speaks for its people. In fact, it doesn't. And the case in point is that Soleimani was a very polarizing figure. Almost as many Iranians are celebrating his death, that they're mourning his death. And we should not be fooled by the throngs of people that you see in the streets of Ahvaz, Mashhad, and Tehran, that we're told to go out and beat their chest and cry and display a show of solidarity. That's not the true story.
Yeah. We were talking about how it's the sort of thing that you sometimes see in the streets of North Korea, dear leader, and everyone is sort of told to cry. I know, see that that's what happened. The kids were told that they couldn't, go to school, get out there and do your thing, right?
That's unfortunately the sad story about Iran. This regime tells the Iranian people how to dress. Women have to cover up. Men are not allowed to be outlandish in their dress, in their outfit. What to think, what to read. They're not allowed to celebrate. Many of their Persian New Year customs are banned or were banned before. So this is a regime that wants to dictate. And we here in Western media do not give enough of a voice and a face to the opposition.
Yeah.
The true Iranians, what do they want? They remember where they came from, and they know what they're capable of doing and going. And this regime does not speak for them.
And you've talked, and the president talked about the deep culture of the Persian culture in Iran. Lara, you spent a lot of time today speaking to people on the ground there. What are they telling you?
Well, one of the things that Iranians have said to me over and over again is that the funeral around Khomeini was a theater, a show put on for the Western media, and they're sort of disgusted at how the Western media has treated a man that they see as a monster, who was responsible. He was the main instrument of the IRGC, was the main instrument of suppression and oppression on the streets of Iran, and so people there have lived with this for a long time. And if you remember, the Green Movement back in 2007 was brutally suppressed, right? There was hundreds of Iranians who were murdered then. Then again in 2017, that uprising was suppressed. And then in November, a third uprising where Iranian people, they were shot in the streets, their bodies turned up in rivers and on streets. Many of them had their hands tied behind their backs, sacks over their heads. Some had been tortured. And what's most interesting to me, Martha, is that, I have known many of these opposition leaders and opposition figures for 15, 20 years now, right? I mean, I've known them through all these protests. These are not short-term relationships. There's not things that are inconsistent with this. And what they remind me of is the 1988 massacre in Iran, where Iran went after the MEK, the main opposition group, and they massacred 30,000 political prisoners in Iran over the summer of 1988. Many of the protesters who were on the streets of Tehran and in 191 Iranian cities in November were the children of those people who were murdered back then. And the Justice Minister of Iran today is one of the people who was involved in that massacre. So what one of the opposition leaders said to me is, this is the conscience of the nation coming back to haunt these murderers. And the message that they received from President Trump's statement today, according to them, is that this is a moment, what it said to the people of Iran is that your oppressors will now be held accountable, and that for them is a moment of opportunity. Are they mobilized? mobilizing? They say yes. They have resistance units across the country. It's impossible to verify that. But certainly they do see this as a moment of opportunity because, as Khomeini said, Soleimani was what he called the soul of the regime, right? The de facto number 2.
So, Nazee, you and I were talking before for the podcast, and we talked about the sanctions, and the president ramped up the sanctions today. And I asked you, do the Iranian people, do they blame the United States for everything that they can't do, everything they don't have? I understand you can't use a credit card. It's very stifling. Do they blame the U.S.?
So, in fact, they're not. And that's the irony of all these, the blustery regime rhetoric against America. Iranians are natural allies of the Americans. This is a sophisticated, educated population. They look to the West. They see all the youth, their same education, even sometimes not as educated as the Iranian counterpart. And they have the lifestyle. They can afford an apartment. They can get married. They can move on. And the Iranian counterparts are basically repressed. They don't have an outlet for their dissenting voice. They don't have a hope for the future. And it stands in stark contrast to Obama, where he waited 11 days, 11 crucial days, before he offered support in 2009 uprising to the Iranian people. And I was telling you before in the podcast that we did beforehand that the chants on the street of Iran, out of the 31 provinces, 29 of them erupted in protest. They're not death to America. They're holding the regime accountable for their misery. They're saying, not Syria, not Iran, my life, not Syria, not Lebanon, my life is only for Iran. So they know that the regime elite is cracking down on them. They know that this is not the regime that they bargained for in the revolution. And they want, as Lara said very aptly, they want the regime to be held accountable.
We will see. That's the big question. You say you get asked in every taxi cab, is this it? Is it possible that the regime could fall this time? And Lara, you called it a moment. And that's the hope here, is that potentially some of this will crack, and we will see. Lara, thank you very much. Lara Logan, Nazee, so good to see you. Nazee Moinian, great to have you with us tonight. So insightful from you both.